Hi, I'm Dr. Gwen, and I'm a clinical psychologist who's been empowering neurodiverse and disabled individuals, their families, and their support systems for over 20 years. I absolutely love curating and sharing tools, mindsets, and actions that I've professionally found to benefit this awesome community. In this episode, I interview Sonni Charness, founder of the Guidelight Group, about the self-determination program that is being offered to regional center clients in the state of California. By the end of this interview, I hope that you have a better understanding of what the self-determination program is, how to get it, who it's good for, and how independent facilitators can be invaluable in this process. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to welcome Sonni Charness, founder of the Guidelight Group. Hi, Sonni. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Dr. Gwen. It's nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Hey, Sonni, before we hop into what we're going to talk about today, I wonder if you can tell the audience about yourself.
Sure. My name is Sonni. I am the founder of Guidelight Group. Guidelight Group is a small boutique agency serving teens and adults with developmental disabilities. We are based in California and focused on people in California. And we're just all about working with each individual and their family, helping them figure out what does an ideal future look like for them? What do they want their life to look like? And then helping to make it happen. So that's aligning the right services and supports and putting together a plan and kind of quarterbacking, we say, the plan to get things rolling. So we get to have a lot of fun and help people do very cool things. So it's an awesome job. And my background is I actually have a master's in special ed focused on transition to adulthood services.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sonni, you guys do a really awesome person-centered plan. I think it's one of the best out there. And I really feel like it really captures the individual person and their really unique dreams and goals, and what kind of needs and supports they have to meet those dreams and goals. To really, I think, focus on a quality of living more than anything that is productive and fulfilled and joyful. So I love your work, which is why I have brought you on to the show, because for this, really, I think this episode is really for our California audience. Not that if you live outside of California, this doesn't necessarily, or this information won't be helpful to you, but we're going to be specifically talking about self-determination programs. And what those are. And those are really specific to our California residents who are a regional center, who are part of the regional center or receiving regional center services. So all that being said, Sonni, can you explain to the audience what a self-determination plan is?
Yes. So here in California, and there are similar things in other states. So they might have different terminology and different, the specifics of the structure might be different, but it's not unique to California, although our individual self-determination program is unique to California. And what it is it's a alternative service delivery model within the regional center system. So here in California, our Medicaid home and community-based services are delivered through a state system called the Regional Center System. And the self-determination program is a service delivery model through that. And basically the idea is that rather than going to a regional center, going to your service coordinator or caseworker, people might think of it that way, and saying, here are the things I'm struggling with, or here are the things that are hard in my life, things I need help with. And the caseworker then offering a preset list of services, and for each service, a preset list of vendors who may or may not be good, or may or may not have availability, or they may or may not have any vendors at all for a service that you need. Instead of that, each individual, often with the support of someone called an independent facilitator, which is what we do, can negotiate with the regional center a budget based on how much money would those services that exist cost the regional center to provide for that person in the traditional system. And the individual can get control of that same amount of money and spend it how they think will help them best meet their goals. So you're able to go sort of out of network, it is a way to think of it. You're able to purchase services and supports that you would not normally be able to purchase through the regional center. So it's much more flexible. It's all about choice and control and freedom. So
yes,
I love this program. We've seen it do amazing things for people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a professional that's worked within the system or with the system, it's like only using vendored, pre-approved, if you will, professionals and services can be quite limiting for some families and some consumers or clients, individuals. So self-determination, I love that, is an alternative service delivery model that allows choice, freedom, and control for that individual to get services that they feel are going to be most beneficial to them within their determined budget. Sonni, how are budgets determined for an individual consumer?
So the budget is determined based on if you stayed in the traditional regional center system, what services would you be eligible for, and how much would it cost the regional center to provide those services to you? And that is the amount of money that you get for a budget, and a budget is for 1 year. So budgets can change from 1 year to the next, or even in the middle of the year. If your life changes, you might become eligible for new services, or your needs might be different, and the budget can change in the middle of the year too. But in general, it's how much money would the regional center spend on the services and supports that you need in the traditional system, and then that amount of money becomes your budget, but you can then spend it in a much more flexible way. It's kind of like insurance. If you think of a HMO plan where you have to always get a referral to go to a doctor, and you always have to go to certain doctors that are in network, versus a PPO plan where you can go to any doctor you want. So if you have a very specific medical problem, the one doctor that really specializes in the problem that you have may or may not be in your insurance network. So it's kind of like that with services. The regional center may or may not have a vendor that can meet your individual need already, but through the self-determination program, you can take the money that they would have spent on one of their vendors and use it to purchase services from anybody else in the open market, we say.
Yep. So I love how you're making you're providing frameworks that people actually can understand, right? And really overlaying it on this new service delivery model. Now, you don't have to go the self-determination route. Like, you can choose to stay traditional route, right?
Yes, it's completely optional. And so if your needs are being met in the traditional regional center system, you can stay there. It is, to be in self-determination, it is a little bit more work. That's part of, there are 5 principles of self-determination, and one of them is responsibility. And part of the responsibility is like, okay, it's a little bit of work. And so for some people, and that's not to say that if you have greater support needs, you can't do it. Not at all. There's not a correlation between the support needs and ability to be in self-determination, because it's just a matter of having the right team of people around you. But there is some work associated with, if you want the freedom of being able to choose different providers, well, you have to find someone to help you find those providers. You need to find them yourself. So it can be a little bit more work. So if your needs are being met in the traditional system, you may not choose to transition to the program.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, it's helpful for people if they want to make an informed choice
Mhm,
about what service delivery model they want to use. They need to understand the differences between the traditional system, right,
mhm,
and the
mhm,
self-determination system.
mhm,
Because what I'm finding in my work is that there are some families that feel more comfortable in the traditional model because their needs
mhm,
are being met. And
mhm.
it's hard for them to coordinate and organize and find and kind of help make sure providers are filling out their financial forms and all of those things to make sure that the services, can be provided. So,
Right.
this is really a really good way to kind of consider what are your individual needs? What are your family's individual needs, maybe? And how does
Mhm,
that match what the service delivery models are, right?
mhm.
Um,
Yep.
I love that. I don't know if this is putting on the spot, Sunny, but you just said there were 5 pillars of self-determination.
Oh gosh, this is this. I have a reference sheet right next to me.
Ah,
Let's see if I can do it.
okay, okay.
Freedom, responsibility. I want to say choice control. Oh gosh, I don't want to get it wrong. Let me look at my cheat sheet. I have it right
Look at
here.
your
I
cheat
always have it
sheet.
right. Okay, freedom, authority, support, responsibility, confirmation. I really should know that based on how many times I say it, but I also say a lot freedom, choice, and control. So anyway, there's a
Yeah.
lot of important words that we use. But so
Yeah, yeah.
freedom,
Mhm.
authority, support, responsibility, and confirmation.
Mhm.
Those are the
Got it.
pillars, the 5 pillars. Mm-hmm.
And when you say authority, I mean, is that you've said you say control? Like that's like I've got an
Mm-hmm.
authority in
Exactly.
my life to like, okay. And then is confirmation like I'm involved in confirming the choices that
Mm-hmm.
are being made? Okay.
Yes. And
Okay.
are these services meeting my needs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love this. And, something that we talk a lot about on the channel is how do we empower agency
Mm-hmm.
in a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the time, we forget to include the adult, the teen
The
in the
person.
problem
Mm-hmm.
solving and the planning of their life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
instead, they're just kind of recipients or receivers of service when we really, really need to shift where they are sitting at the table of their life and involved in
Mm-hmm.
whatever way is meaningful for them, but
Mm-hmm.
trying and attempting to involve them at whatever level of participation they can be
Right.
in their life. Yeah. Any thoughts about
Mm-hmm.
that, Sunny?
Yeah. This is really central to the entire concept of self determination, even just in the title of the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
Um, and the program is, I want to say, like all home and community based services, Medicaid funded services federally, are everyone is sort of making the shift to being based in something called person centered planning. And so, but certainly the self determination program is everything. Is based on person centered planning. That person centered plan is the foundation um, of everything. So the person centered plan drives what's going to be in the IPP, which is like the regional center's IEP. It's like their
Mm-hmm.
official document, which includes the services and supports, which make up the budget. And then you have to write a spending plan for how you intend to spend the money in your budget, and it has to align with the goals in your IPP and the goals in your PCP. So every PCP meaning person centered plan. So everything kind of is built upon this person centered plan, and so that is where I see, and really it's the intention of the structure of the program, that's where you make sure that the person has a seat at the table, that their voice is the driving voice in the decisions that are being made about their life, and it's through that person centered planning process. Um, and it's really important that uh, people who are developing person centered plans, either as a professional like me, where I help people write their plan, or sometimes family members do it for each other, um, that whatever the team of people is who are putting together that person centered plan, that they recognize and are mindful and conscientious about making sure that the person's voice is heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And how do we facilitate that voice? How do we give a place for that voice to be heard, in whatever
Mhm.
form that voice comes out? And
Mhm.
so I love that. Um, Sonni, for the audience, a person-centered plan is separate from a self-determination plan. I just want to make sure, like, a self-determination plan is based on a person-centered plan. But I love how you
Mhm.
said a person-centered plan is like an IEP, right?
Mhm.
With the district, and that
Mhm.
I always encourage parents to be really specific, as specific as they were with goals in an IEP, that they also
Mhm.
need to be specific with goals in an IPP.
Mhm.
And that this person-centered plan is really helpful in informing that IPP. So I
Mhm.
think, yeah, I just want to make sure that parents understand, like, they have a format for this. Like
Yes. So
if you, yeah,
let's break it down
yeah,
like step at a time. Okay. So a person-centered plan is it's a it's a plan, obviously, but we turn it into a document, so it ends up being a document. But it's the product of a process, and the person-centered planning process has multiple steps. It starts with pre-planning, so talking about what are the topics we're going to address in this plan, who are the people that need to be involved in the conversation, how are we going to make sure that the focus person's voice is central, and that, depending on how they communicate and whatever other um, situations are unique to them, like that will have to be planned out. So that's what would be done during pre-planning. And then usually there's one or sometimes more than one group facilitated conversations where a trusted group of people that have been selected by the person get together and talk about the topics that have been identified. And then usually there's someone to facilitate that conversation. Also, often there's also someone to take notes on that conversation, and the conversation takes place, and then someone will then write up a plan based on what was discussed. And the idea is that this plan or this document reflects what the focus person wants for their future, and the support that their circle of support, the people that they trust, can offer, and the services, and sort of more formal supports that they would need, like systemic supports, in order to work toward that future. So that's kind of like what's in the person-centered plan. In the self-determination program, that plan is then presented to the regional center, and the regional center writes the IPP, which is their version of an IEP, based upon that person-centered plan or that person-centered planning process. But the IPP is a regional center document, so it still takes the same, like the format of a regional center document. It's more, a little bit more formal, and reads more similar to like an IEP than, whereas the person-centered plan is really in plain language. It really captures like the essence of the person, so it's different. But the person-centered plan, or PCP, drives the IPP. And then the IPP will outline the services and supports that the person would qualify for in the traditional regional center system, which then drives the budget. Once the budget is agreed upon, then we put together what's called a spending plan, which is, okay, I have this amount of money for the year. Here's how I plan to break it down and spend it in order to achieve my goals. And that's written out, and that gets passed through the regional center and attached to the IPP. And once that's agreed upon, then a person can start in the self-determination program. So they've got their person-centered plan, they've got their IPP done with the regional center, they have their budget, and they have their spending plan, and then they can start.
yeah. So it's really important for a family or a consumer or a client, an
Mm-hmm.
individual, to make sure that their PCP is reflective of who they are and what they need,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that the IPP
Mm-hmm.
also reflects that. Sonni, can you define, what does an IPP stand for?
Individual program plan.
Okay.
So it's the equivalent of an IEP, but in the regional center service system instead of the school system.
Right.
Individual program plan.
Got it. So we go
Mhm.
person-centered plan first, which
Yep.
informs the individual program plan.
Yep.
That individual program plan, then because it's going to list formally what the services that are needed
Yep.
to support this person are, leads to budget.
Yep. Yep.
The formation of a budget anyway.
Yes.
And all
Yep.
of those things together after they've been agreed or approved, if you will, by the
Yep.
regional center, that makes you eligible for self-determination, right?
Yes. Then you can start in the program. So it's like you have a start date of when you're exiting the traditional system and starting in self-determination. So all these steps have to be completed, and then you're like, okay, on April 1st, I'm starting in self-determination, or whatever date.
Yep.
So it's
yep.
like it's a switch that turns on or off, like you're in or you're out.
Right.
Of the
And that's important for people to know. Like you are, there is no, this is completely dichotomous. Like you're either in traditional or you're in self-determination. Those
Yes.
are the only two options right now in regards to service delivery.
Yes, there are a couple of exceptions of services that you can still get through traditional if you're in self-determination, but it's not important for the general understanding of the program. In general, yes, it is dichotomous. It's one or the other.
Got it. And then Sonni, who are the main players of a self-determination planner program? Who is usually on a team to make sure, that SDP or that self-determination is moving in the direction that it needs to move into?
Mm-hmm. So first and foremost is the person receiving services, obviously. And beyond them, I mean, the regional center has involvement because obviously they are providing the budget and all of that. But on a day-to-day basis, the regional center is not involved, which for some people, that's a reason not to go into self-determination rather than stay in traditional system, just kind of depending on your needs and your experience. But it is a regional center program. So in that sense, the regional center is certainly a player. But putting that aside, it's the focus person. Then the only other required member of the team once you're in self-determination is called an FMS, or a financial management service. So we talked about having this budget and spending money and purchasing services. Well, the regional center doesn't just write someone a check for $100,000 and say, good luck. The person never actually receives the money. The money is spent and handled by a third-party financial management service, or FMS. So that's the only required member of the team besides the person receiving services is the FMS. You cannot be in self-determination without an FMS. And there's like 10 or so FMSs that you can choose from. Beyond that, it's up to the person who they want. Often or usually people have family members, especially immediate family members, siblings or parents, depending upon their age and their circumstance, involved in their plan. And then often, but it's not required, is an independent facilitator. So that's what I am, and that's what a lot of what we do at Guidelight Group is independent facilitation, and that is, we help people before they enter the self-determination program. We help them create their person-centered plan and negotiate their budget and get everything, get all those steps done and get everything organized. We help with the advocacy and all of those pieces. But then once they're in the self-determination program, an independent facilitator can help implement the plan. I used the term earlier, quarterbacking, but like it's, you have all these cool ideas from your person-centered plan about things that you can do in your life. And, I want to find a trainer, or I want to find a cooking coach, or I want to whatever. And then someone has to, we talked about the responsibility, someone has to make all that stuff happen. And so that's something that an independent facilitator can do is just kind of help you implement your plan.
Yeah, which has been, I think, extremely helpful, because now you went from a limited set of services and people to now unlimited people. How do
Mm-hmm.
you find those
Yeah.
people? How do you connect to those people?
Right.
How do you help those people be accountable to the plan?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important. Sonni, self-determination really isn't for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking earlier about, if your needs are already being met in the traditional service delivery model, then,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to go to self-determination. Who do
Mm-hmm.
you see self-determination good for? Like, when is it a good fit
Yeah.
for someone?
There's a lot of examples of this, or different types of people, but first and foremost, if your needs are not being met in the traditional regional center system, and there's a lot of different reasons that could happen. It could be because none of the vendors that are available are good, or that they have wait lists, or the way that they offer the services don't fit the way that you need to receive the services to make them work for you. It could be that the specific types of services that are available just don't match you. We see that a lot with we see that a lot for a variety of reasons, but I think often it's people who fall on either extreme end of support, the range of support needs, like people who qualify for regional center services but have the smallest amount of support needs. Often those people, it's hard for them to find a good match. And the same thing on the other end is often the people who have the greatest amount of support needs, it's hard for them to find a good match too. So those are examples, but just if your needs are not being met in the traditional regional center system, one of the big challenges that we're seeing across the board right now, and I know obviously this is a national problem, is a worker shortage. A lot of our clients, I would say all of the agencies out there that provide different types of services for people with disabilities are short staffed. Like, we're just, everywhere we go, there's waiting lists, or just cannot find workers, and there's just not enough staff. And so self-determination program can actually help with that, because one of the things that it allows people to do is, you can, instead of going through an agency to hire a one-on-one personal assistant or teacher or support in the community or whatever, or a respite worker or anything else, instead of having to go through an agency, they can hire the people directly and pay them more. Because if you're paying an agency $35 an hour, and the worker is making $18 an hour being paid by that agency, you could take that $35 an hour and pay your worker $25 an hour. And so sometimes it opens up a greater pool of possible support staff going this way. And it can, you can also get better people, or have less of the revolving door of support staff, because you're able to pay a little bit more. So that's a reason that a lot of people go to the self-determination program.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that something that I'm bumping into is, when I have a family that's quite overwhelmed with managing, organizing, all of the things that happen in their life, that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they become overwhelmed by self-determination because of that responsibility pillar
Mm-hmm.
that you were talking about. Have you bumped into that at all as well?
Yes. And I had a conversation about this recently with someone, and it's like, people feel that overwhelm even in the traditional system, and sometimes almost even more in the traditional system, because you don't have control. And before I started Guidelight Group, I was working in a vendor agency I was a service provider, and I was running adult programs there. And one of the biggest frustrations that I had, which drove me to start Guidelight Group, was how siloed everything is. And I was working with families, and we were providing day program or individual support or independent living skills support, but there were other agencies and other service providers and people in each individual's life, but it was outside of our scope, outside of what we were contracted to do, to collaborate and to coordinate and to sort of blur the lines, so that it was a cohesive support system, instead of each agency or service had to like stay in their lane, and it makes it so that someone has to manage, someone has to bridge, and often it falls onto the parents. And that was originally the idea that I had, and that's something that we do in and out of self-determination for clients, is like, for families, is bridge and coordinate and blur the lines. So people's lives don't work like, well, from this time to this time, I'm doing independent living, but from this time to this time, I'm doing like this other thing. Like, that's not real life. Our real lives are, we're just a person, and this is what my life looks like, and I need support. And so, I think that overwhelm that you describe happens in the traditional system too. So the conversation, I just started to say this before and I didn't finish, but the conversation I had with someone recently is like, self-determination can be work, but having services that don't meet your needs is also work and is also overwhelming. It's just like a different type of work. And so I think, each person and each family really has to look at their current situation and what is causing them work, what is causing them stress, what is creating that feeling of overwhelm, and would the self-determination program help? And of course, are their needs being met? But it's sometimes, I think, you're like trading one type of work or one type of coordination for another, and having more control it can be easier in the long run.
Yeah, I like how you put that. I like how, evaluating the source of overwhelm or source of stress is like really important here. And I actually really like that kind of differentiating factor of, if you feel like your needs are supported in the traditional system, that might be a good indicator to stay in the traditional system. But if not, then looking at this other option, well, at least you have an option now, looking at another
Right.
option, right? So that's great. Sonni, really quick, because the self-determination plan or program is so dependent upon a really good PCP and a very good IPP. I understand that the IPPs happen once a year around the client's or individual's birthday. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. How often do PCPs happen?
So a PCP can happen, there's no set amount of time, but in general, when it pertains to the self-determination program, we're doing it annually. And so we do, and it might look different. Like the first one is usually, because it's the first one, it's much more in depth and involves, bringing everyone together. And but sometimes the following year, we don't like, we're like, okay, we've made progress in these areas. We want to tweak these goals. These things are different. But in general, we don't feel that we need to bring this big group of people together this year. But then the following year, maybe, okay, now a lot has changed in my life and we're going to do a bigger one. So it really depends on the person and kind of what's going on in their life. There are some people that are going to have a major person-centered plan team meeting every year. It could be more frequently than that. An example of that is, we've had many clients where we start working with them like in the summer or in the fall or in the winter. We get a person-centered plan together. They're still in transition services or still in high school. And then we are like, okay, well, we're going to put this plan together to sort of guide what needs to happen between now and the end of school. But we're going to get together again in like May or June and do a new plan based on these big changes that are happening in your life. Or like at the end of the summer or whatever, because sometimes life changes, or we do a person-centered plan and the person is still living in the family home, and then, an opportunity arises or whatever, and now they've moved out on their own and things look really different. So it can happen in, less frequently or more frequently than every year. But at least for self-determination, we want to do it at least once a year. Just look at the plan, make sure we're on track, make sure we're not forgetting about goals that were important to the person, make sure that their needs are being met. And then that will drive what's included in the IPP each year as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know another question that parents have about self-determination is, does any service that they believe that has been deemed to be helpful for the person. Can
Mhm.
any service be funded under your self-determination budget?
Almost. There's a few things that cannot. So, well, there are things like rent and cost of living expenses cannot. Services that can be accessed through what's called a generic resource cannot be funded through self-determination. So, for example, if something like speech therapy, if you put speech therapy in your self-determination, in your spending plan, the regional center is going to say, well, have you explored insurance? And have you explored the school district for speech therapy, and what can you get there? Same thing with, certain psych services, or, therapies for children. ABA therapy is something that can be now purchased through insurance. So that, you can't put that in. So if something can be accessed through the school district, through insurance, through another state or federal program like the Department of Rehabilitation, then those are considered generic resources, and you have to go there first. So the regional center is always the payer of last resort, and so you can't pay for things that can be paid for in an alternative way.
Got it. And I think that's just kind of to education, education about what services can be provided. I understand that in order for an individual to participate in SDP, they do have to attend an introductory or informational session. Is that right?
Yes. So there's an orientation, and actually the department, like the state Department of Developmental Disabilities, which oversees the regional center system, is working on redoing the orientation. But there is an orientation. Each regional center offers it in different formats, like in person or live via Zoom, or some regional centers have a pre-recorded one that you can do like on your own timeline. But you do have to get through them. It's they're working on redoing it to make it shorter and easier. But right now, I believe it's like a 4-hour training. So it's usually like 2-hour sessions. Just because, as we've learned today, it's like there's a lot of terminology and steps. So they just want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, and what the expectations are before you start.
Yeah.
And what your rights are, importantly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's good. And then I think this is where an independent facilitator is really helpful, because, you guys understand what the rights and the system looks like. You guys understand how those services, or what kinds of services, kind of fall under the umbrella of generic, or if you can get them as, somewhere else, and that regional center would be payer of last resort. Those are important things, because, having expectations about getting certain services when actually they're not covered. That's a real disappointment and a deal breaker. So, anyone listening to this, and you're interested, really going to your regional center and taking that orientation is really a good first step to understanding what, or how the system works. Hey, go ahead, Sonni.
I was just going to say, having a good independent facilitator. You don't have to have an independent facilitator, but and I'm clearly biased here, but I really believe that having a good independent facilitator is crucial to all parts of the program, just to helping you understand, to making sure it moves smoothly, to making sure you have the right budget, to making sure that your plan is good, your person-centered plan, and all of that. So yeah, that's the other piece.
Yeah. I mean, I had a guest on, and we were talking about the Christine Ferreter, and we were talking about bureaucracy and the importance to understand the players, the rules, and the game. You have to understand that for any service delivery model to work, whether you're in an IEP educational setting, or a regional center setting, or a healthcare setting for that matter, understanding that. And I do feel like independent facilitators become the consultant in understanding what the rules, the players, and the game, how is that played, and to help families make the best choices they can, given the specific rules that are at play.
I love that. Yes, that is exactly the role of an independent facilitator.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, Sonni, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, you know what, I really want to explore the SDP program. I know that's redundant, SDP, and or they want to get an independent facilitator or get connected to a good one. How
Mm-hmm.
can they find you? What's the best way to find you in Guidelight Group?
The best way to get in touch with us at Guidelight Group is on our website. So it's guidelightgroup.org. You can contact us through our website. There's a form right on the front of our website to get on our waiting list for SDP services. And then you can also email us through the website or at hello@guidelightgroup.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sonni, for
Thank
coming on
you.
today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.